Olaf's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Up close and personal? Suits me. A kill's a kill. At 1 yard or 1,000. That's all you have? Even licking Molof's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Up close and personal? Suits me. A kill's a kill. At 1 yard or 1,000. That's all you have? Even licking Molof's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. That's all you have? Even licking Molof's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Up close and personal? Suits me. A kill's a kill. At 1 yard or 1,000. That's all you have? Even licking Molof's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Even licking Molof's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Up close and personal? Suits me. A kill's a kill. At 1 yard or 1,000. That's all you have? Even licking Molof's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Up close and personal? Suits me. A kill's a kill. At 1 yard or 1,000. That's all you have? Even licking Moloch's boots was too much for you. You're pathetic. I never understood what Tangier saw in you anyway. Up close and personal? Suits me. A kill's a kill. At 1 yard or 1,000.
Keep it up, Alias. I'm on my way. Keep it up, Alias. I'm on my way.
Number 1, hit the like. Number 2, hit the bell. Number 3, hit the share. Number 4, leave a comment. Thanks. The left are developing several new giveaway plans to take from white Americans and give to people of non-European extraction, as if that famous one in 1965 wasn't enough. We're back on the topic of reparations, and as I said last week, what starts on the activist fringe eventually percolates up into the mainstream left. This is evidenced by several recent developments, including Democratic Senate leadership officially endorsing the idea of exploring reparations legislation. We've seen a media blitz, too, no doubt coordinated in order to gin up public support for the idea. But what would these proposals actually look like? How would they impact the people responsible for paying them? People like me. I argue that Americans have already paid reparations 10, if not 100 times over. I'll explain why today. Without revealing too much of my conclusion, this video comes to us courtesy of James, good name, over on Subscribestar, who requested I talk about the myth of modern-day minority oppression. Talk about that we shall. And reminder, for just $5 a month, you can help keep my completely demonetized channel online. Get a voice in what I talk about in every Friday video and more. Check out my Subscribestar page for that and more. Now, the truth about oppression and reparations. But first, my friends at Rugged Reserves want to keep you safe this summer and in case of any emergency. The future of America and the stability of its power grid are not guaranteed, and neither is your safety. One of the best things you can invest in for your home protection is the Patriot flashlight. That is why Rugged Reserves wants to extend a special 15% off Patriot discount to all customers throughout the month of July. I literally keep mine by my bedside and take it with me on any outdoors trip. You should too. The Patriot flashlight is solar powered. Never worry about charging again. Patriot flashlight is the perfect gift for you and your loved ones. Limited supply lasts, and this is the very last chance to get yours at a discount before they sell out. Take the advantage now and give you and your family the gift of mass protection. Limited supply lasts, and this is the very last chance to get yours at a discount before they sell out. Take the advantage now and give you and your family the gift of mass protection. Limited supply lasts, this is the very last chance to get yours at a discount before they sell out. Foods, 12.9 trillion in unpaid slave wages, and 4.2 trillion due to labor market discrimination, healthcare and education, the criminal justice system, and the impact of Jim Crow. Given a U.S. population of 328 million at 62% white, that's approximately 202,740,000 white people. Divided into $17.1 trillion, that is a meager reparations figure of only $84,000 per white person. Basically, I could buy a Tesla Model S P100D Performance Edition, which goes 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds and has 687 pound-feet of torque, or I could give all my money to a random black person. Unless that random black person is then going to hand me the keys for a Tesla Model S P100D, this is an exchange I'm not interested in. This estimate is based on the provisions considered in House Resolution 40, which has been gaining steam in the U.S. House. In the Senate, Democrat leader Chuck Schumer announced his support for a bill that would set up a commission to explore reparations. From Yahoo Finance, quote, activists have been calling for reparations for years. And in 2016, a UN panel declared that the U.S. owed black Americans reparations because of slavery and its link to injustices today in America. In particular, the legacy of colonial history, enslavement, racial subordination and segregation, racial terrorism, and racial inequality in the U.S. remains a serious challenge, as there have been no real commitment to reparations and to truth and reconciliation for people of African descent, the report claims. Contemporary police killings and the trauma they create are reminiscent of the past racial terror of lynching. Impunity for state violence has resulted in the current human rights crisis and must be addressed as a matter of urgency. African Americans are disproportionately targeted by the criminal justice system, accounting for 33% of the prison population, but only 12% of the adult population in the country. According to Pew Research, this is in comparison to their white counterparts, who make up a third of the prison population, but over 60% of the adult U.S. population. When leftists and anti-white activists call for reparations, they tend to hit you with a bunch of things at once. Jim Crow, education, discrimination, criminal justice, slavery, all of it, and how it all hurts black people to this day, and how it's time to pay up. The UN is dead wrong. U.S. social policy for the last 100 years at least has been almost solely focused on helping black Americans, oftentimes to the direct, explicit disadvantage of white Americans. The idea that there's some kind of deeply ingrained anti-black discrimination that's resulting in omnipresent, omnipotent oppression of black people, holding people back, It's simply not true. Criminal justice is an excellent example. As Yahoo Finance states, African Americans are 33% of the prison population, but only 12% of the general population of the country, not Gen Pop in the prison. Without missing a beat, right on narrative, they describe African Americans as being, quote, targeted by the criminal justice system, as if there are roving gangs of vigilante white men cuffing black men, throwing them in for-profit prisons for no reason. In reality, FBI Table 43. We all know what's going on with the disparity in crime rates per capita, especially in terms of violent crime like rape and murder. In a write-up for the National Review, David French, of all people, writes the following, based on recent FBI crime stats. Quote, in other words, black men were roughly 9 times more likely to be murdered than white men, and the overwhelming majority of those murders were committed by other black men. Black men were far more likely to murder white victims than vice versa. That's a horrifying racial disparity. David, starting to sound a bit like an extremist. Watch out. And from U.S. News and World Reports, quote, killings of blacks by whites and whites by blacks accounted for about 12% of the roughly 6,000 homicides last year, in which police had information about the race of both victim and killer, a slight increase from around 11% in 2014. About 15.8% of white victims were killed by blacks last year, and 8.6% of black victims were killed by whites. According to this chart and these numbers, in any given year, there are anywhere from 2 to 3 whites killed by blacks for every black person killed by a white person. Those white numbers include Hispanics, by the way. How do these hundreds of lives taken every year in interracial killings factor into the reparations debate? Hypothetically speaking, would white Americans whose immediate family members have been killed or murdered or assaulted by black criminals still have to pay reparations? That's a much more clear-cut example of direct harm being done, and much easier to prove than unpaid slave wages from 200 years ago. Strictly in terms of crime and criminal justice, if any group deserves reparations, it's white Americans for being disproportionately victimized. Now, education. The left would have you believe that white supremacist college administrators are personally barring the doors to keep disadvantaged minority students out. This fantasy couldn't be further from the truth. From fastweb.com, a college scholarship aggregator, quote, Black History Month, also known as National African American History Month, is the time in which Americans celebrate the achievements of African Americans throughout history. That makes this month the perfect time to celebrate the achievements of up-and-coming history makers, too. That means students like you. There are abundant scholarship opportunities from notable African American advancement organizations, like the NAACP, UNCF, and the Congressional Black Caucus Incorporated, just to name a few. Celebrate your heritage with a scholarship, and consider using your education to make a difference in the world, like the many honorable African Americans who have rewritten history time and time again. Who knows? You could be the next person the world is celebrating. Opportunities include the Goldman Sachs MBA Scholarship, a $30,000 scholarship for minorities interested in the financial services industry, or the DiversityAbroad.com Study Abroad Blogging Scholarship, available to minority students that want to write blogs. 2.75 GPA required, though, so watch out. There are millions, if not billions of dollars available in minority and black-only scholarships. Universities allow minority students to get degrees with the sole purpose of politicizing their racial identities in an anti-white direction. Minority students are given preferential admissions treatment at most U.S. colleges. The SAT, used at most colleges for determining admissions, now factors in the adversity a student had to face in determining their final score. This is a test that was supposed to be about writing ability, reading comprehension, and mathematics. Now, your academic value is determined by how, quote, oppressed you can make yourself out to be. In other words, Asian and white students, you better be really good at creative writing. We are actually organizing our society to directly disadvantage and push out the smartest and most capable people in order to reward others based solely on their racial minority status. What implications on engineering and science can you see arising from this trend? The nuclear plant is melting down and the hydro dam is crumbling, but at least our graduating class in the engineering school had perfectly egalitarian racial balance. The idea that minority students experience discrimination or mistreatment in the education system is downright laughable. The sentiment in most of education right now is pretty explicitly F-whitey. Cosmopolitan intellectuals in coastal havens, many of them holding foreign passports, educated abroad, believe that white students should under no circumstances be allowed to be taught by white teachers. At the same time, they state that minority students must have educators of the same race. Noah Berlatsky, a well-connected, social-climbing, coastal intellectual elite in thick-rimmed glasses, lambasts white parents that do things like read to their children and prioritize education. In fact, he accuses those parents of being white supremacists. Of course, nobody would think twice if he sent his kids to a private religious school, but his seemingly high-minded, liberal opinions are pumped into the brains of suburban, acceptance-seeking parents across the country that don't know any better and just want to be seen as good people. Any adverse effects that arose because of Jim Crow and educational differences in very specific locales in the early 20th century have long been erased. And these massive, multi-trillion-dollar giveaways the Democrats are planning, they won't do anything to substantially change the living conditions for African Americans. Why? Well, number one, they aren't going to happen. The elites that control this transatlantic system simply don't need to rile up black voters to win elections anymore. The implementation of a literal cash payment system would be too unreasonable, too unwieldy, and too unpopular. The truth is, we've already done reparations. You're paying reparations every day. You have to study harder, to get better grades, to do better on tests. You have to fight extra hard to earn positions in academia and the job market you would otherwise qualify for that are being taken away from you on the basis of your race. You're paying reparations in every paycheck. The U.S. government acts as a welfare system that is disproportionately propped up by white taxpayers and disproportionately used by others. And the thousands of people victimized in interracial murders have paid, unfortunately, with their lives. In strictly financial terms, Ryan Falk did a breakdown of the U.S. national budget and budgetary impact by race. He found that on net, white taxpayers generate a net surplus of $553.5 billion, or $2,795 per capita. By contrast, he found that blacks run a budget deficit of $389.71 billion, or $10,016 per capita. In effect, the average black American is already receiving a $10,000 reparations check every single year. You can read his full report linked down below under sources. What is the broader point here? Well, these Democrats are not acting in good faith. They're not trying to actively improve the lives of black people in America, or organize an orderly cash transfer. That's not what's going on. All of this political posturing we're seeing now from Schumer and others is electioneering. It's designed to generate excitement in the black base ahead of the 2020 elections. Polling has found that only 1/4 of Americans support reparations of any kind, and 68% oppose federal compensation for the descendants of slaves. This is all being put out there to generate excitement ahead of the 2020 presidential election. But just because it's unlikely to happen doesn't mean we shouldn't fight back against it. It's important to attack the premise that these reparations are owed in the first place, and to show people how the U.S. has already done more than enough to offset any inequalities allegedly arising from discrimination. When Chuck Schumer says racism is the poison of America, I kind of agree with him, but in the wrong way. For decades, American social policy has been solely focused on ensuring equality of outcome and maximizing diversity, to the point where radical liberal egalitarianism is this country's primary mission, at home and abroad. Simply put, a country dedicated to the demonization and destruction of its own majority population cannot survive as a world power.
I'm almost there. Hey, Alias. Let's get wet and wild. We're heading there. The nanolab is hidden beneath Sopot's feet. We're gonna destroy the lab, and Molov with it. Come on, get us out of here while I hack a few databases and find us a way inside the statue. Watch out for the currents down here, Alias. Hard to concentrate with all this racket. Much more of this pounding! It's gonna crack like a dropped egg. Watch out for the currents down here, Alias. Hard to concentrate with all this racket. Much more of this pounding! Betcha that's 100 flushes. Or more. This sub's gonna crack like a dropped egg! Watch out for the currents down here, Alias. Hard to concentrate with all this racket. Can't take much more of this pounding! This sub's gonna crack like a dropped egg.